Hey everybody, I'm the Drink Pro. Today I'm randomly reviewing one of these samples. What's up everybody, Kyle the Drink Pro here with you yet again. Thank you so much for joining me today. A special thank you, I must say, to everybody who's returning, who's been waiting for me to put out some new content. It's been about a month at least since I have filmed another Drink Pro video, and part of that's because I've been moving into a new space. As you can see, this does not quite look like the old studio, and that's because it's not. I've moved into a new house. I've spent a lot of time trying to get everything set up in this house. We've had a lot of problems, unfortunately, with the water heater, the HVAC, all of the things you need to actually survive. So we've got most of that sorted out. I can finally start putting some time and energy into making this content yet again. I don't like how this room sounds at all. Real harsh. Now, this is something I've never done before. I hope to make it a regular series on the channel. We are going to take a random sample from my collection of samples. You guys have been incredibly generous. Thank you all so much. Any and everyone who has sent me a sample. And don't worry if you can't send me a sample. If you like what I'm making, please click the subscribe button, click the like button, click the bell for notifications. But for all of you who have sent me samples, I know it has been a long time waiting with bated breath for me to actually review them. I want to start reviewing more and more of those, and specifically trying to not overthink these reviews. A lot of times I get caught up in trying to make a really interesting conversation about each whiskey, and this is really me trying to remedy me getting in my own way. So today we are going to pull a sample from this large box of samples and totally randomly, and we're going to review it without me knowing what it is. I don't really know where my whiskey is at all right now because everything is in chaos in my new home. So it's a perfect opportunity to take advantage of my ignorance of my sample collection. So let's get to it. I don't have a knife. How the hell am I going to open this? Okay, here we go. Random sample, not gonna read what it is, just gonna pour it out into the glass. There we go. So this will be kind of fun. Oh man, just on the nose I can smell that's incredibly fruity. Oh, and before I forget, on Halloween this year, October 31st, 2021, I'm going to be doing the Pocky One Chip Challenge in a live stream. It'll be at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when it will start. I'll probably eat the chip a little later. I'm going to need a little liquid courage to start the night. But I will be eating on live stream. This may be a bad idea. The Pocky One Chip Challenge. Now, if you don't know what this is, you should look it up. This is a scorpion pepper and Carolina Reaper chip. It's supposed to be the hottest chip in the world, the hottest tortilla chip in the world. So it's going to hurt. It'll be fun to watch me suffer. I hope you can join. Oh, I don't know what I just poured myself, but it is amazing. Beautiful, sweet grapes. Oh, strawberries, a hint of lemon zest. You guys know I'm a sucker for a fruity whiskey, so this is right in my wheelhouse. Oh, and that's interesting. The more it starts to breathe and I let it open up by swirling it, the more I start to get this slight nuttiness, almost like a sunflower seed or maybe a pistachio, that sort of sweet, subtle nuttiness. And it's blending in with those sweet fruits, so I get lots of berry and that subtle nuttiness at the same time. And as I keep smelling this, I love the crescendo that's happening. It builds and grows and gets more complicated. I started with that sweet fruitiness, which I love. But then I got that added level of complexity with a nuttiness. And now I'm starting to get hints of that char note, just subtle. They're not overpowering. They're not removing those other notes. They're adding, they're building this wall of sound, this wall of flavors. Subtle char and a little bit of tannic oak just create this nice like bass note underneath the layers of sweet, fruity, subtle, nutty. The one final note I'm picking up, there's a little bit of lemon. I mentioned that early on, but it kind of went away. It's come back, and now there's lemon on top of all of this. This is just a beautiful pour. All right, I can't wait anymore. Let's go ahead and take a sip of it. Cheers. Now, this is interesting. I really like this, but I'm honestly a little disappointed. I expected it to be fruitier on the palate, like it was on the nose. It's a nice pour. It's a good whiskey, but the nose kind of tricked me into thinking this is going to be sweet and fruity when it really wasn't, which is okay. You don't need every whiskey to be sweet and fruity, but I always have a hard time with whiskeys that smell very different than they taste. I always feel a little bit duped. Even if the smell's bad and the taste is good, that's really hard for me to overcome. It's hard for me to buy that whiskey even though I like the taste. Now, before I dig into the notes on this further, I want to say you can drink along with me. I have not been doing the Patreon benefits this month, but I'm going to start them up again in November. If you're currently a Patreon member, November will be a free month for you. If you haven't joined, please consider joining. Once we get into November, there's going to be some really cool benefits. There's going to be some giveaways. There's going to be rare bottles for sale. There's going to be opportunities to drink along with me on a video call. So please consider checking it out. Patreon.com/thedrinkpro. You know, I mentioned that this was a little bit disappointing because I got so much fruit on the nose, but I actually really like the palate. The more I sip on it, the more it grows on me. It's woodier than I expected. It's got a lot of that nuttiness, though. The nuttiness, which seemed like the sort of secondary note on the nose, has now become very predominant. A lot of pistachio, a lot of almond, maybe some black walnut on the finish especially. You get this sort of nice, oaky, subtle earthiness that pairs with like the black walnut note. The barrel char that I was smelling isn't super prominent on the palate. Maybe long into the end of the finish, you get a little bit of dark chocolate and barrel char. It's actually got an incredibly long finish. Whatever this pour is, I have to imagine it's got some significant age on it. I would guess 15 years plus. This thing is old, and I can tell that because it's mellow, it's complex, and it's pretty darn oaky. But because it's not super hot or super highly oaked, I'm thinking this isn't something like a Stag. This isn't one of those high proofers. This is a relatively low proof whiskey, I'm betting. Or at the very least, it's something that was aged with a very specific palate in mind. Someone was saying, I want this to be a smooth, easy drinker, and maybe not necessarily an explosive flavor bomb. Oh, man. Going back to the nose, I still like the nose on this way more than the taste. It smells so good. I mean, the smell on this, to me, is akin to like a Pappy. Like, this thing smells like the Van Winkle products to me. Big fruit. It's a little nuttier than a lot of the Van Winkle products. A little bit oakier, too. But it's got that big, bright nose that I expect from higher-end Buffalo Trace at the very least. All right, yeah, I'm getting more and more oak. Each sip, it gets further away from the nuttiness and towards the oakiness. And it's really important to think about your experience when you're tasting a whiskey. Your first taste is not the end-all be-all taste. This was the first pour whiskey I had tonight. It was the first taste of anything that I'd had. So right out of the gate, it was a fresh palate, and now I'm getting sort of acclimated to the profile, used to what it's presenting me, and the oak is really starting to come out to play more and more. And I kind of have mixed feelings about that. I will say, if you like an easy drinking whiskey with a very long finish, this is really going to be in your wheelhouse. It's balanced, it's complex, it's easy drinking, and it has a lot of oak and nuttiness and barrel char and chocolate on the finish. It's a very good pour. In the current bourbon market, I'd say this is probably between $100 and $200. We'll call it $150 MSRP. I don't personally think I would pay that for it. I'd probably pay maybe $80 or $100 just because it doesn't really have the flavor profile that I typically prefer myself. I know people who will really like this, but it's not probably my go-to whiskey. All right, let's finish it off and find out what it is. You know, a lot of times on these reviews, I'll give 10, 15, 20 notes. I'll go really deep into the weeds, but this pour doesn't really lend itself to that, and that's kind of, to me, indicative of what it might be. This is going to be a brand or a product that isn't trying to be super complex. It's not trying to make something like the William LaRue Wellers or the George T. Staggs, or even if you want to go to a different brand like a Heaven Hill 27, which is something that's going to be relatively balanced, relatively low heat factor on the palate, but it has lots of complexity and lots of nuance and tons of notes, and it will take you forever to get through. That's a great experience pour, but sometimes you want something that's really good, has a long finish, has some complexity, but isn't one of those whiskeys you have to sit there and analyze. And I think this kind of fits into that category. If you've got money to throw around, $100, $200 isn't going to break the bank for you, but you want a really good whiskey with a lot of age on it that isn't too hot, that isn't too oaky, but still has a significant amount of oak and isn't too complex while still having that balance and nuance. This is a middle-of-the-road bourbon if there ever was one, except you added about 8 more years to it from your standard middle-of-the-road bourbon. All right, enough dilly-dallying. Let's find out what it was. Here's the sample bottle. Oh, Woodford Very Fine. So this is, I think this is the 17-year-old Woodford that they recently released, part of the Masters collection. I believe also it was Trevor that gave me this. If those are not correct, I will put below what is correct, but I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the sample. I'm happy I was able to review this, and I gotta say, I really stand by everything I said. This is an old pour on purpose. They were trying to do an older whiskey, and a lot of the Woodford products, for me, they're good, balanced whiskeys, but they are middle of the road. They are not trying to be anything unique or special. They're not trying to break your brain. They're just trying to have a good pour for a good time. So this really fits the Woodford mentality in terms of making whiskey. I am surprised how much fruit I got on the nose of this. I think the palate doesn't surprise me because I know the Very Fine is a particularly old pour of Woodford. So the fact that it was so woody and had a lot of that nuttiness makes sense to me. But the berries on the nose were incredible. That's something I don't ever think I've gotten from another Woodford pour. So really cool pour. This was a great time. I'll probably do this again. Sample roulette, guys, is a lot of fun. If you want to send me a sample, reach out to me. I'm at The Drink Pro pretty much on every social media except TikTok, where I'm at _The Drink Pro. Whoever has that handle, give it to me. I want it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please consider liking, subscribing, sharing it with your friends. Press the bell for notifications. And if you want to help me out even more, please consider joining my Patreon. You guys keep drinking like professionals. I'm out of whiskey there, so I guess I'll take a little pull from the sample bottle. Cheers.